The phone rang just as I was putting the finishing touches on dinner. I had been looking forward to this evening all week, a quiet celebration for our 3rd wedding anniversary. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered, a smile already on my face, ready to say, "Honey, you should come home soon. I've made all of your favorites." But I never got the chance to speak. Clara's voice, calm and measured, cut through my cheerful anticipation before it could even form into words. "Julian came back today," she said, her tone smooth and even. "He wants me to pick him up from the airport." I went completely still, the name hanging in the air like a sudden frost. Julian. Hearing his name always triggered an immediate, instinctive feeling of inferiority, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. Clara continued, her voice remaining gentle, as if she were discussing something as trivial as the weather. "I'm just telling you ahead of time so you don't overthink things. Oh, and I sent you a little something for our anniversary. It should have arrived by now. Remember to check for it." After the call ended, I walked zombie-like to the front door and found a small package waiting on the porch. I brought it inside and opened it to find a handsome box containing a pair of expensive-looking cufflinks. For a moment, a wave of warmth washed over me, a flicker of happiness in the cold dread that had settled in my chest. The gift seemed to say that I still mattered, that despite Julian's return, I was still the one she was thinking of on our anniversary. But as I turned the box over in my hands, I noticed a small, almost imperceptible flaw on the corner, a slight tear in the velvet lining. It was a minor thing, but it bothered me. The next day I took them to the luxury brand's boutique in the city center, hoping for an exchange. The sales associate was polite but firm. "I'm very sorry, sir," she said with a practiced smile, "but we cannot offer replacements for promotional gifts. We can't guarantee that they will be flawless." I was stunned, holding the cufflinks that suddenly felt cheap and heavy in my hand. "Promotional gift?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "Yes," she confirmed. This particular item was a complimentary gift with any purchase over $100,000 last week. I stared down at the box, my mind racing, connecting dots I hadn't wanted to see. Just then, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from my mother-in-law. "Ethan, I know I sound like a broken record, but you really need to hurry up and give me some grandchildren," the message began. "Clara clearly doesn't have her head in the game with you, and you're slacking off. The way things are going, who knows if you'll still be calling me Mom next year." My mother-in-law's messages were often laced with this casual cruelty. I had grown mostly numb to it over the years. She came from wealth, and had never approved of my humble origins, never missing a chance to remind me of my perceived inadequacy. But it was the image attached to the text that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of Clara and Julian on a magnificent yacht, the sun setting behind them. They were looking into each other's eyes with a tenderness I hadn't seen from her in years, their fingers intertwined. My hands started to shake. I zoomed in on the photo, my eyes scanning the background, and that's when I saw it. There, on the plush sofa next to Julian, was a crisp, new shopping bag from the very same luxury brand as the cufflinks. But it wasn't just one bag. Surrounding it were at least 10 other shopping bags from various high-end designers. A wave of despair, so profound it was almost dizzying, washed over me. Clara hadn't bought me a gift. She had given me the freebie that came with the mountain of gifts she had purchased for Julian. In that moment, the marriage certificates we shared, the vows we had taken, felt like nothing more than a meaningless sham. Walking out of the mall, a chilly autumn wind cut through the glass doors, mirroring the ice that had formed around my heart. The night felt profoundly cold and empty. Back home, I sat alone at the perfectly set dinner table, the anniversary meal growing cold, when my phone rang again. This time it wasn't Clara. It was Julian. His voice was smooth and charming, laced with an undeniable playfulness. "Oh, Clara, don't be like that. Let me talk to Ethan for a second," he said, clearly teasing her. I could hear the seductive, confident tone in his voice, even through the phone. "Ethan, my friend, how have you been lately? I'm doing great. Clara rushed straight from work to pick me up today, you know?" He paused, then added with a sigh of feigned regret. "But don't get me wrong, I would never want to come between you two. As long as Clara's happy, I'm content." Realizing his supposed slip-up, he quickly corrected himself. "Sorry, Ethan. I was just rambling. Don't take any of it to heart." I let out a silent, humorless laugh. "She isn't happy," I thought. "She misses you constantly." But all I said out loud, forcing a grin into my voice, was, "No worries. We're great. I hope you have a good trip back." Just then, Clara snatched the phone, her voice suddenly serious and sharp. "Ethan, don't make things difficult for Julian. He's just a simple guy with no ill intentions." I was speechless. "I'm not," I started to say, but she cut me off, her voice filled with a weary condescension, as if she had it all figured out. "I see through your little schemes, but Julian is like family to me. Don't involve him in our issues. We're married now. He's no threat to you." I didn't know whether to feel rage or a profound sense of defeat. There's a saying that whoever loves first is always the captive, the one who loses. Everyone had always told me that marrying Clara was the biggest stroke of luck in my life, that I had married up. I knew, and was often reminded, that I could never compare to Julian. He was the charming young heir of a corporate giant, the one who had supported Clara and her family when her own business was on the brink of collapse. Had Julian not minded Clara's relatively modest background back then, they would have undoubtedly ended up together. But fate, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. Shortly after they parted ways, Clara's business began to skyrocket. Unaware of this complex history, I met and fell for the graceful, ambitious woman she had become. For 3 years, I pursued her with everything I had, a relentless, wholehearted devotion. Eventually, she agreed to marry me. After the wedding, at her suggestion, I left my job to become a stay-at-home husband. "We're a couple, Ethan," she had said, taking my salary card from my wallet. "We shouldn't have secrets. I'll give you a supplementary card. Use the money as you wish. It's our joint asset now." Holding that card, I had felt a profound sense of sweetness, not because of the limitless credit, but because of the security and trust I thought it represented. Soon, however, I began to see the limitations. The card couldn't be used to withdraw cash. I couldn't even use it to send a few $100s to my grandfather for his living expenses. Each time I had to ask Clara directly for money, she always had a perfectly reasonable-sounding excuse to put me off or give me less than I needed. Once, I gently brought up the idea of taking my salary card back, just to manage my own small finances. She had become instantly angry. "Ethan, don't you trust me? There isn't much in your account anyway. Do you really think I care about that little bit of money? If you want it, just take it." Seeing her so upset, I immediately dropped the subject, ashamed for even suggesting it. Outwardly, my life as a full-time husband seemed idyllic. But inside, I was a wreck, completely dependent and powerless. My mother-in-law constantly pestered me about grandchildren, and I had nothing to say. I couldn't very well tell her that, aside from our wedding night 3 years ago, our marriage had been entirely platonic. Clara finally returned home several days later. I greeted her with a smile, trying to pretend that everything was normal, but she brushed past me and sat on the sofa, her expression as cold as stone. "Ethan, I didn't realize you could be so petty," she said, her voice dripping with disappointment. I froze, completely bewildered. "What are you talking about?" "Julian told me you insulted him over the phone. Why would you do that?" "I didn't," I said, but she held up a hand, silencing me. She was convinced I was lying. Her eyes, which I had once found so captivating, were now like chips of ice. Julian was my first love, you know that. Now that I'm with you, why do you still feel the need to make things difficult for him? What did he ever do to you to deserve that kind of humiliation? My own anger, which I had been suppressing for days, finally boiled over. My nails dug into my palms as I struggled to keep my voice even. So, what exactly did I do wrong? I asked, the words tight with resentment. On our wedding anniversary, you spent the entire day with him. The gift you sent me was a cheap freebie you got from buying him tens of thousands of dollars worth of luxury goods. You listened to his one-sided story and come storming back here to accuse me. I have so many grievances, Clara, and absolutely nowhere to voice them. So tell me, who is actually insulting whom here? My voice cracked with emotion. I know I'm just a poor guy who's never seen nice things, but you can't just insult my intelligence and my feelings with someone else's leftovers. A sharp pain lanced through my chest, but I managed to force a bitter smile. I looked her up and down, a sudden, reckless impulse taking over. I mean, even your precious Julian didn't want you when you had nothing. Why should I be grateful for a freebie he didn't want either? The words had barely left my mouth when the sharp sting of her hand connecting with my cheek echoed in the silent room. Ethan, watch your mouth, she hissed, her face contorted with fury. Julian and I had no choice but to split up back then, but I am more than enough for you. Don't get greedy. Her smile was cold and mocking, any trace of warmth she once held for me completely gone. I'm telling you now, Julian is back, and I will be spending most of my time with him. So you had better stay at home and behave. If I find out you're causing any more trouble for him, don't expect me to care about this marriage for 1 second longer. She reached into my wallet, which I had left on the coffee table, and pulled out the supplementary credit card. I'll be holding on to this for now, she said coldly. Once you've come to your senses and apologized to Julian, and I'm satisfied that you mean it, you might get it back. That card was my only lifeline. Without it, I was completely adrift, unable to buy groceries, let alone live. I lunged for it, a desperate attempt to reclaim my last shred of independence. Didn't you say this was our joint property? I pleaded. Clara easily pushed me to the floor, her face a mask of contempt. Julian was right, she sneered, looking down at me. All you care about is my money. There's no way I'm giving you the chance to sneak it away behind my back. Her glare was merciless. The prenuptial agreement was very clear, Ethan. My family's money has nothing to do with you. You should spend the next few days at home reflecting on your behavior. The front door slammed shut, leaving me alone in a heap of emotional and financial chaos. I lay on the cold floor for a long time, waves of pain, both physical and emotional, washing over me, each one cutting deeper than the last. Only now did I remember the thick stack of papers she had me sign a week before our wedding. The joy of finally marrying the woman I loved had made me careless. I had signed without a second thought, not bothering to read the contents. What a fool I had been. This so-called life as a stay-at-home husband, this fantasy of shared assets and no secrets, it was all an elaborate lie Clara had spun to strip me of my last ounce of security. Our marriage wasn't a partnership, it was a cage I had willingly walked into. Just then, my phone began to ring. It was the local hospital. My grandfather was critically ill. By the time I rushed to his bedside, he was lying still, his breaths shallow and labored. The rhythmic, piercing beeps of the heart monitor felt like a stake being driven through my own heart with each pulse. He's been in poor health for a while, the doctor explained grimly. It's due to years of poor nutrition and overwork. My grandfather had raised me. I could still vividly remember him carrying me in his arms as a small child, a large bag filled with recyclables slung over his other shoulder. I clutched his frail, worn hand, pressing my phone to my ear, my voice breaking with sobs and desperate pleas. "Clara, I'm begging you. We've been married for 3 years. I won't ask for anything else, ever again. Just give me my paycheck card back. Grandpa won't last much longer." The other end of the line was a confusing tangle of intimate-sounding noises and music. Clara's voice, when she finally answered, was detached and cold. "You must be joking," she said with a scornful laugh. "Today it's your grandpa. Who will it be next time? Ethan, the agreement is clear. My money has nothing to do with you." The doctor approached me again, his face grave. "His condition is critical. Without immediate surgery, he won't last the week." Panicked, I scraped together every last penny I had hidden away, a total of $5,000, but the surgery required another $5,000. Outside the hospital, a cold rain began to pour down. Huddled under a small awning, I called her one last time, swallowing my pride. "Clara, I don't want anything else. I won't fight you over Julian. I'll apologize. I'll say whatever you want me to say. I shouldn't have argued with you. It's all my fault. Please, I'm begging you. I just need $5,000 more." Her voice was as cold and sharp as ice. "Ethan, are you really that desperate for money? Don't you realize what you've been living off of all this time?" Before I could respond, a nurse rushed out of the hospital doors and grabbed my arm. "Ethan, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice full of pity. "Your grandfather, he missed the window for resuscitation. My phone slipped from my numb fingers, the screen cracking as it hit the wet pavement. But the shattered screen didn't stop the flood of notifications that suddenly lit it up. A first-class flight ticket purchase for 2, a $100,000 jewelry expense, a $1 million charge at a luxury resort, a $3 million charge at a designer boutique. It turned out that while I was supposed to be at home reflecting, she was on a whirlwind world tour with her lover. Her money could be spent on anyone and anything, but not on the $5,000 that would have saved my grandfather's life. The phone rang again, her name flashing on the broken screen. "Hello?" I answered, my voice hollow. "Ethan, I can't believe you'd stoop so low." Clara's voice dripped with contempt. "Hiring people to act for you, making up stories about your grandfather, you're truly pathetic." I rushed back into the emergency room and saw the still form on the bed, covered by a stark white sheet. A piece of my heart simply died. The phone rang again. Unfeeling, I answered it. "Who gave you the guts to hang up on me?" she seethed. "Keep this up, and I swear I will divorce you." She had finally said it. Divorcing me had clearly been on her mind for some time. Today was just the trigger she needed to finally be rid of me. "Fine," I said calmly. "I agree." "What did you say?" My placid agreement clearly took her by surprise, her voice laced with disbelief. "I said, I agree to the divorce," I repeated, my voice devoid of any emotion. For the first time in years, I spoke to Clara without a trace of love or hope, harboring no illusions about our shattered marriage. "Harry, what kind of trick are you playing now?" She didn't believe me. After a pause, a flicker of what she thought was realization entered her tone. "You're trying to gain sympathy, aren't you? Trying to make me feel guilty so you can get a bigger settlement. I'm telling you, even if we divorce, you won't see a single cent from me." The line went dead. I let out a bitter, empty laugh. She truly believed that everyone in the world was as conniving and transactional as she was. I looked down at my wedding ring, the diamond on it shining brightly, mocking my years of foolish devotion. I twisted it off my finger. It meant nothing to me now. After processing the death certificate, I had my grandfather's body cremated. There was now one less person in this world who truly loved me. I took his ashes back to our old home, the small house where I grew up. It had been empty for so long that a strong, musty odor hung in the air. While sorting through his few belongings, I found nothing but a handful of patched-up old shirts. The tears I had been holding back for days finally flowed. I clutched his worn clothes to my chest and sobbed, a profound regret washing over me. If only I hadn't so recklessly pursued a love that was never meant for me. If only I hadn't been so gullible, so quick to believe Clara's lies about our shared future. I would have had the money for his treatment. I was overwhelmed with a suffocating self-loathing, a deep resentment for myself and for her. After cleaning the house from top to bottom, I found a yellowed comic book in a dusty box in the attic. It had clearly been read many times, the pages soft and crumpled. I tried to remember. Yes, Grandpa used to read this to me to entertain me when I was a little boy. But I couldn't recall any of the details. I flipped it open randomly, and on the inside cover, a few words were scribbled in pencil. Clara's name stood out, clear as day. Was this her comic book? Why did my grandfather have it? The question was a fleeting puzzle, and I soon forgot about it, packing it away with a few other mementos before taking my grandfather's ashes to be buried on the small hill behind the house. Returning to the large, opulent house Clara and I had shared, it felt cavernous and empty, utterly devoid of life. I found our wedding photo. In it, I was beaming, a picture of pure happiness. Clara's lips were curled into a smile, too, but her eyes held no joy. I had never noticed it before, but looking at it now, I could see it clearly. There was no love in her gaze when she looked at me. All this time, I was simply her rebound, a tool she used to heal from the heartbreak Julian had caused. Just because I was willing to go the extra mile to give her my whole heart, she had thrown me a hollow, loveless marriage as a consolation prize. The thought was so absurd, it was almost hilarious. I closed my eyes, and with steady pressure from both hands, I tore the photo in two. A single tear escaped and rolled down my cheek, a final mourning for my dead romance. I placed the two pieces of the photo into a large envelope, along with my wedding ring and the signed divorce papers, and had them couriered to her office. After packing a single bag with my things, I walked out of the home I had lived in for 3 years. As the door clicked shut behind me, I took one last look back, a final, silent goodbye to my past. Back in my small hometown, the little house became my last refuge. I figured Clara would be thrilled to sign the divorce papers, given that I wasn't asking for anything from her, only for the return of my own salary card. Now she could finally be with Julian openly, without any pretense. A few days later, I was woken by the sound of urgent, insistent knocking. I opened the door to find an angry-looking Clara standing on my porch, with Julian hovering nervously behind her. I certainly hadn't expected them to show up here. This was the first time she had ever lowered herself to visit this run-down little village since we had met. Before I could say a word, Clara grabbed my wrist, her eyes scanning the humble surroundings. "You live here?" she asked, a note of disbelief in her voice. "Yeah, this is where I grew up. It can't compare to your mansion, I know." "I'm not talking about that," she said, her brow furrowed with an urgency I couldn't understand. "I mean, why haven't you ever mentioned that you lived here, in this specific place, before?" "I have," I replied coolly. "You just never wanted to come with me." Back then, I had been eager to show Clara where I'd grown up, to share my childhood memories with her, but she must have despised the idea, because she always found an excuse not to come. Eventually, I just stopped asking. Feeling a bit awkward under her intense gaze, I watched as she looked around again. "Is there a river to the south of here?" she asked, her voice softer now. "And a row of apple trees?" Before I could answer, Julian interrupted her nostalgic trip down a memory lane I didn't understand. He stepped forward and placed a hand on her arm. "Clara, let's just handle what we came for. There are too many bugs here. I think I'm starting to feel allergic." I rolled my eyes. "Julian, why don't you go wait in the car if you're so scared of bugs? This place is run down. It's full of them. There might even be wild wolves and stray dogs, too. We wouldn't want you to get freaked out." Since they both seemed to think I was deliberately being difficult, I decided I might as well lean into it. The disdain I felt for him was written all over my face. Sure enough, my words made Julian turn pale, and he practically hid behind Clara. She patted his arm reassuringly. "He's just messing with you. There aren't any wolves here." Then she turned to scold me. "Why would you try to scare Julian like that? He's really not that brave. There's no need to hassle him," I sneered. "Clara, what role exactly are you playing right now? We aren't even divorced yet, and here you are, flaunting your affair in my home and criticizing me for it. Isn't that a bit of a joke?" She latched onto what she perceived as a slip in my words. "So, you don't want a divorce anymore?" "Of course I do," I shot back. "With the way you and Julian are inseparable, let's just get this over with. Sign the papers and we can go to the courthouse tomorrow." Seeing my unwavering determination, Clara's tone surprisingly softened. "Ethan, you misunderstand. Julian helped me once, a long time ago. I'm just repaying the favor." "Clara!" Julian suddenly screamed, cutting her off. We both turned to where he was pointing, his finger shaking. "Why is there a grave right there? That's so creepy!" He panicked. Clara calmly rubbed his back. "We're in the countryside, Julian. It's normal for graves to be nearby." "But I'm scared! Who would bury a dead person so close to a house? It's bad luck!" he complained, his voice whiny. A hot anger rose within me. "Watch your mouth," I snarled. "What's so unlucky here? The only unlucky thing is you shoving yourself into our marriage. You might be alive, but you're far more unlucky than the dead." Julian hadn't expected such a direct attack. He stared at me, his eyes glistening with false, wounded innocence, as he turned to Clara for support. Her own eyes burned with indignation. "Ethan! How could you say something like that to Julian? It's not surprising he thinks your family has no manners, burying people on a whim. You really can't shake off that pauper's mentality, can you?" I couldn't hold it back any longer. Rage, pure and unrestrained, swirled within me. My hand swung through the air, and the resounding crack of it connecting with Clara's face silenced everything. "Shut up, Clara," I choked out, my voice thick with grief and fury. "That grave, it belongs to my grandfather." Julian, who had been about to retaliate on Clara's behalf, froze when he realized who was buried there. "Your grandpa? He's really gone?" Clara whispered, her hand on her stinging cheek. Tears I didn't know I had left began to run down my face. "Yes, he's dead. He died because there was no money for his treatment. Are you happy now? The man you see as bad luck was my only family." I pointed a trembling finger at Julian. "Clara, I may come from poverty, but didn't you rise from it too? Did you forget that so quickly? When you hit rock bottom, he didn't want you. Now that you have money, he's come crawling back and you think it's true love? That's pathetic." My words seemed to strike a nerve. Clara's face tensed with a mixture of anger and frustration. She angrily fumbled in her purse, pulled out the divorce papers, and scribbled her name across the signature line. "Divorce it is! You win, you bitter, spiteful person! I'm sorry I ever married you," she spat, as Julian, standing behind her, smirked victoriously, mocking me with his eyes. But it didn't matter. All I wanted was the divorce. With the papers finalized, I surprisingly didn't feel the sadness I had expected. Instead, a sense of profound freedom washed over me. Clara returned my salary card and even gave me the updated password. "I hope you two have a miserable life together," I called after them as they left. I immediately went to the bank in the next town to reset the password. Seeing a balance of just over $100,000 saved there, a fresh wave of sorrow rose within me. It was more than enough to have saved my grandfather's life. Blaming Clara seemed pointless now. The blame I felt for myself was far more fitting. In the following weeks, I took a teaching job at the small school in town. The requirements weren't high, and the pay was enough to get by. Sometime later, while scrolling through social media, I came across Clara and Julian's official engagement announcement. The comments section was flooded with blessings and congratulations. A photo of them kissing provoked a bitter smile. Clara and I had wedding photos, of course, but she had never allowed me to post them or even announce our marriage publicly. Her excuse back then was that her company was preparing for its IPO, and publicizing her marriage could be harmful to the stock price. I had trusted her completely and told no one. Now, with the company public and thriving, she was free to marry her one true love. To the outside world, they were a perfect match, a modern-day fairy tale. No one knew about the husband who had been tossed aside, or that the true love had once been the intruder. The day after the announcement, the town's mayor sought me out. Having come back from the city, most people in the village viewed me as someone worldly, someone who had seen more of life. "Ethan, a big company from the city wants to come here to shoot a commercial, promote our town a bit," he said excitedly. He asked if I would help coordinate the visit, since I had experience with city folk. For our small town, this was a huge spectacle, and I happily agreed. I never expected that Clara and Julian would be the ones arriving with the production crew. They stood together, looking intimate and powerful, immediately capturing the attention of the entire village. Everyone showered them with praise. "That's the millionaire's husband, huh? So handsome." "He's even prettier than Ethan, and look at those clothes. That must be expensive material." "Yeah, and that huge rock on the boss lady's hand has to be a real diamond." I was standing off to the side, watching, when Julian was the first to spot me. He started walking over, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Ethan, long time no see." That self-satisfied attitude of his made my stomach churn, but with so many people around, I couldn't just ignore him. "Yeah, long time." He took a step closer and whispered in my ear, "Clara and I are getting married next month. I hope you can come to our wedding." He then gave a bright, saccharine smile and waved Clara over. The two of them stood in front of me, a united front. "Ethan, I'm genuinely inviting you," Julian said loudly, for the benefit of those nearby. "We would really love to have your blessing." Clara looked at me with a complicated expression, but she seemed unable or unwilling to refuse Julian's request. "I'll send you an invitation," she said quietly. "I don't need it," I replied flatly. I seriously wanted to crack open Julian's head to see what kind of twisted wiring was inside. "Clara, are you crazy? Inviting your ex-husband to your wedding with your lover?" "Julian is not my lover," Clara hissed, her face flushing red with embarrassment at my words. "Not a lover?" I pulled out my phone and showed them the picture her own mother had sent me, the one of them on the yacht, hugging and gazing at each other. "Who would believe there's nothing going on between you two? Check the date. It was our wedding anniversary." Julian tried to snatch my phone, but I dodged, and he nearly lost his balance. Clara caught him, holding him tight. "Ethan, how dare you try to push Julian right in front of me?" At this point, I was sure Clara had some serious issues with both her reasoning and her eyesight. I just shrugged. "You'd better take your lover and get out of here, or I'll just keep bullying him." "Let it go, Clara. Ethan didn't mean it," Julian said, putting on his best act of a benevolent victim. He pulled Clara away to prepare for their photo shoot. And that's when I understood. When the mayor mentioned a commercial, what he really meant was their wedding photo shoot. Our village was known for its beautiful, untouched scenery, and though it was the first time anyone had chosen to take their wedding photos here, I had somehow ended up as Julian's unwilling personal assistant. Despite having a large crew at his disposal, he kept asking me to get him things, to fetch him water, to hold a reflector. It was clearly deliberate. I bit my tongue and completed each task, eager for the day to be over. I was afraid that if I stayed even a second longer, I might finally lose control and physically hurt the both of them. "Right then," Julian shouted, his voice high-pitched with alarm, catching everyone's attention. "My ring! My ring is missing!" He started searching frantically, and Clara immediately got everyone on the crew to help look for it. After a long, fruitless search, Julian pointed a finger directly at me. "Clara, Ethan must have taken it." There was no way he could make such a baseless accusation after using me like a servant all day. "I didn't take it," I said firmly. Clara seemed skeptical, torn. "Julian, keep looking. Ethan wouldn't take your ring." Julian put on a deeply hurt expression. "Clara, really? You trust him over me? I just took it off for a second, and he was the only one standing near me. Who else could possibly have taken it?" "I said I didn't take it, so stop accusing me." Clara looked between us, deep in thought, unable to make a judgment. "Would you let me see your bag, or let us search you then?" Julian demanded, the request utterly ridiculous. Of course I refused, but he kept going on and on about how important and irreplaceable the ring was, a family heirloom, he claimed. Finally, Clara approached me, her expression hardening. "Frank might be right, Ethan. You've always been greedy. You might really have taken it." "You wish," I muttered, clutching my bag tightly, unwilling to budge. To Clara, this only made me look guiltier. "If you didn't take it, why won't you let us look? Ethan, you're unbelievable, stealing from us." Feeling completely justified, Julian lunged for my bag. In the ensuing struggle, it fell to the ground, and everything spilled out onto the grass. A pack of tissues, my house keys, a glasses case, and the old, yellowed comic book. The bag was one I had bought myself, the only decent one I owned. Usually I just carried a simple canvas tote, but today, wanting to look presentable for the big company visiting, I had used this one. Everything was out in the open, and there was no ring. Yet Julian wouldn't give up. He kept whispering urgently to Clara. "Clara, it might be on his person. We need to check him." He called her name several times, but she didn't respond. Instead, she was squatting on the ground, picking up the old comic book, her gaze fixed on it. Her hands were shaking slightly, and her breathing grew quicker. "Ethan," she said, her voice tight, "why is this book in your bag?" Julian tried to grab it from her, but Clara swatted his hand away. He could only cling to her arm, whispering sweetly, "Clara, it's just a silly old book. Let's go finish the shoot." But this time, Clara didn't listen. Julian's voice seemed to grate on her nerves, and she snapped, "Shut up!" He was shocked into silence, standing there biting his lip in discontent. Clara looked at me, her eyes searching my face. "Tell me, why do you have this book?" It was labeled with her name, after all. "My grandpa gave it to me," I explained. "If it's yours, you can have it back. I wasn't holding on to it to be spiteful." "That's impossible!" she suddenly shouted, her voice so loud it startled me. Before I could react, she grabbed my shoulders with both hands, her grip surprisingly strong. "Where is your grandpa? I want to see him!" Her words hit me like a physical blow, reopening a wound that was still raw. I slapped her hands away. "Are you crazy? I told you my grandpa is dead! He died because you wouldn't give me the money for his treatment!" Clara stumbled back a few steps, her eyes already welling up with tears. "Is there a portrait? There has to be a picture on the headstone, right? Take me to see it." I had never seen her like this, so frantic and desperate. Almost without thinking, I led her to my grandfather's grave on the hill. Clara leaned in close to the soiled, weathered photo on the headstone, staring at it intensely. She closed her eyes, as if trying to dredge up a distant memory. When she opened them again, they were red and raw from unshed tears. "Ethan, isn't there a river to the south of here?" "Yeah," I said, confused. "But a kid drowned there a long time ago. It's not clean anymore, so they filled it in." Hearing this, Clara crumpled to the ground in front of the grave. She grabbed her hair with her hands and cried out in a pained, strangled voice, "No, it can't be! It's impossible!" She suddenly stood up and whirled on Julian, shaking him hard by the shoulders. "Didn't you tell me that you saved me? Huh? Then why is this comic book here with Ethan?" Julian seemed completely clueless, unable to say anything that made sense. "Clara, I did save you, remember? I was always by your side, pushing you to be better. Didn't you always say I was your savior?" Clara froze. She looked at me, then at the headstone, and then back at Julian. She shook her head slowly, mumbling that it was all a mistake. Suddenly, she crouched down again, hugged her head, and began to cry loudly, as if releasing years of pent-up emotion. "Ethan," she sobbed, looking up at me, her eyes filled with an agonizing pain. "I got the wrong person." As she spoke, I remembered something that had happened many years ago, though the details were a bit blurry. 10 years ago, while my grandpa and I were out scavenging for recyclables in a neighboring town, we saw a little girl struggling in the water and a woman lying unconscious on the riverbank. My grandpa, without a second's hesitation, jumped in and pulled them both out, performing first aid until they were breathing again. The woman came to quickly. I was about to head home to grab them some food and dry clothes, but they left in a hurry, seeming dazed and disoriented. They must have carelessly dropped the backpack they were carrying, and the comic book must have fallen out. What I never could have expected was that the little girl and woman my grandfather saved that day were Clara and her mother. After her father had died, spending all their money on his health care, her mother was left with nothing. Feeling hopeless, she had attempted to end both their lives by jumping into the river in this remote village, thinking no one would ever know or find them. But my grandfather just happened to be there. Funny how life works. Julian, who apparently also had pigtails as a young boy, appeared in Clara's life some time later, and she, in her trauma, naturally assumed he was her savior. I let out a long sigh, followed by a wave of deep, profound bitterness. "I'm sorry, Ethan." Clara kept apologizing, her face a mask of regret. "I'm so sorry for you and for your grandpa." "It's too late, Clara," I said, my voice flat. "Grandpa's gone. Back then I begged you for the money to save him, but you didn't believe me." "No!" She pounded her head with her fists. "I thought you were lying. I didn't know it was your grandpa, that it was him who saved me." "How would you have known?" I countered, the bitterness sharp on my tongue. "You never came home with me. You never even met my grandpa. Clara, you looked down on me. You never loved me." "No, Ethan, don't say that. I mistook someone else." She pointed a shaking, accusatory finger at Julian. "It was him! He was the one who lied to me all these years." Julian stomped his foot like a petulant child. "That's just what you thought. I never lied outright, you just assumed. You believed whatever you wanted to believe back then, and now you're blaming me? Clara, you're the one who's insecure. Did you actually love me? Or were you just using your money and your position to conquer the idea of me?" Watching them bicker, I couldn't help but laugh. This was the man Clara had kept enshrined in her heart for a decade. This was the kind, understanding, heroic figure she had always talked about. The days after they left were peaceful. But the whole ordeal made me realize something important. Being poor is one thing, but having children grow up feeling sensitive and inferior because of it is another. In this remote, undeveloped town, education was what the children needed most. We had to make sure that kids from less wealthy families received a decent education so they could accept their backgrounds without shame and learn enough to change their own futures. And so I dedicated myself to that cause, traveling around, pushing the local government and the Education Bureau to prioritize funding for rural children. With the first round of donations, the kids at my school got new desks, a proper playground, and the same new textbooks as the kids in the city. Once word got out, successful people who had grown up in similar situations and other good-hearted people started donating as well. The foundation for a brand new school building was already laid. When it was finished, I would be its principal. I would guide these kids to a brighter future. One night, a news story went viral online. It was about a high-profile murder case. After their trip to the village, Julian had secretly started shifting a massive amount of assets out of Clara's name, nearly bankrupting her company. Clara, already wanting to break up with him after the revelation about her rescue, confronted him. They had a huge, violent fight. It ended with Julian dead and Clara as the prime suspect. Late that night, there was a knock on my door. It was Clara. "Ethan, I killed someone," she said, her voice strangely excited, not scared at all. "I killed Julian. From now on, you are the only husband I will ever have. I promise to love only you." Her eyes were wild. "The police must be after me now. Let's run away together. I know you still love me." To keep her calm, I pretended to agree. I told her to wait while I went to pack my things. As soon as I was in the other room, I called the police. When they broke down the door a short while later, Clara was still a bit shocked. "Ethan, why did you call the cops?" she asked, her voice full of confusion and betrayal. "I love you. We could wander the world together. Even though I'm broke now, isn't my love for you enough? Don't you love me?" I looked her in the eyes and nodded slowly. "No," I said. "I don't love you anymore." What did you just say?" "I don't love you anymore, Clara. You have to face the consequences of what you've done. You used to be more than enough for me, but now you're not." As the police led her away, she kept shouting that she loved me, her voice echoing in the quiet night. But I didn't need it anymore.